So welcome everybody to the US RIG meeting. We've changed the name of the research interest group to represent better the more broad number of places that are participating. So goodbye to the Greater Boston label and welcome to US RIG. This meeting today is going to be taken over by UMass Lowell. We have a great project with several students who've been engaged in their capstone project for their career in UMass Lowell EE department. And they've been working with Fedora and are going to be telling us about their experiences with Fedora, what they're doing with it, and where things are going at UMass Lowell with this in the future. So with that, I'm not sure who's going to speak first, but I want to acknowledge the two mentors of this student group. Dr. Vinod Vokkarane, who's on the call here, is the UMass Lowell mentor. I see your video there. Thanks, Vinod. And Mohan Boddu is the Red Hat mentor, both of whom work very closely with these students. I'm happy to say that this is the second time we've had a project working on Fedora at UMass Lowell, and this group and Professor Vokkarane have been very important in making that into something that can be a continuing engagement. So without any more announcements, I'll let whichever one of the students is going to speak first take over and introduce the rest of you.
Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So as Heidi mentioned before, we are the Friendly Fedora project at UMass Lowell. I am Ryan McCann. I'm a computer engineer.
I'm Sage Lyon. I'm also a computer engineer.
I'm Robert Santos. I'm a computer engineer.
And my name is Rob Moeller. I'm an electrical engineer.
Our faculty mentor at our university is Dr. Vinod Vokkarane, and our industry sponsor at Red Hat is Mohan Boddu. So, what is the Friendly Fedora project? The objective of the Friendly Fedora project is to create a Linux distribution that includes essential applications and is simple to install. It also needs to meet the needs of the UMass Lowell community. Some points of discussion for this presentation are our efforts in creating the official UMass Lowell open source club, packaging useful software and learning more about the packaging process in Fedora, creating and handing out a survey to evaluate Fedora's usage along with other desirable Linux features at the university level, and finally, installing Fedora on some Linux lab machines in the computer science department. So the problem is many Linux users at UMass Lowell prefer to use Ubuntu rather than Fedora. As mentioned before, we created and sent out a survey this semester that we'll talk more in depth about later. But one of the questions related to, if you use Linux as your primary operating system, what distribution are you using? 71% of students said Ubuntu, 18% said Fedora, along with 11% using other distributions. So the desired condition is to modify and improve Fedora so that Linux users change their primary OS to that distribution. We want to make it more desirable as a primary OS for university students. Moving on to our formal objective statement. The objective is to popularize Fedora by creating a more friendlier distribution for UMass Lowell students and faculty by May 2025. This is a 5-year project, and we are currently wrapping up the second year. Deliverables to be expected this semester and in future semesters are to first, conduct further research on Linux lab users. Last year's team conducted research on the preferences for people who use Linux as a primary operating system, but it was in a more general sense. This semester, we wanted to focus on those who specifically used the Linux lab. We want to build upon and create new packages for the system, along with learning more about the packaging process and what goes into a spec file. We want to start the first official open source club at the university to help increase Fedora's popularity, along with open source initiatives. Develop metrics to track Fedora's usage. And finally, successfully distribute and share the system with the UML community.
So what are the benefits of Fedora? Well, firstly, Fedora updates faster than other Linux distributions. And one of the reasons for this is because no changes are made to the Fedora GNOME. With Ubuntu, they make changes to their OS that they might think benefit the system, and to do this, they change their GNOME. Fedora doesn't do this. If changes need to be made, Fedora users can just talk to the GNOME community, make the changes upstream, and pull them into Fedora, making Fedora close to the upstream code since there are no changes to the upstream. This also leads to Fedora getting faster updates than Ubuntu. We will also make sure that Fedora has benefits to it that appeal to UMass Lowell students. Benefits such as graphing software and calculation software. These are the kind of programs that we package throughout the semester. And then lastly, feedback from the open source club and the survey can give us ideas on what to add in order to make Fedora more appealing to UMass Lowell students. So in order to popularize Fedora, we need to expand its reach and improve its quality to keep users interested. First, we need to understand how friendly Fedora packages will be built, as in what goes into building and maintaining software packages. Next, we need to see what UML students want in Fedora to expand its outreach. And we plan to expand Fedora's reach by starting an open source club, which is a club dedicated to congregating students interested in open source, making Git-style projects that generally utilize Linux. Students will also be allowed to share ideas amongst each other. Thirdly, we'll analyze feedback from Linux lab users to see what improvements they would like to see made in the distribution. So far, we've turned in club applications, recruited members, and planned advertising campaigns to improve the quality of the distribution. As I said before, we're also planning on making it more user-friendly. So over the course of the semester, we packaged projects and software that we thought might be useful for the UML community. One of these packages was a Python library called numdiff tools, which can be used to solve and graph differential equations. When packaging this, we found out that one of its dependencies, AlgoPy, was not packaged in Fedora, so we went along and packaged that as well. It's a library for evaluating higher order derivatives. We also packaged another Python library called Abstract, which is used for creating and drawing graphs and taking advantage of graph properties. We created a GitHub repository to upload all the spec files and source RPM files of each application we package. When we were ready to submit our packages for review on Bugzilla, and use the GitHub repo to link the spec and the source RPMs. To help with our workflow, we were tasked to create a GitHub action that would lint all the spec files in the repository when a push or pull was made. One side task that our mentor, Mohan, had us do over spring break was create a GitHub pages site to display our resume. This gave some of the group members who were not familiar with Git and GitHub a better understanding on how to use these tools.
So, a survey that the survey that we had was distributed to the graduate and undergraduates of the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department at UMass Lowell. We also posted flyers in high traffic areas of UMass Lowell to advertise the survey, which had a QR code to link to the survey, which means that other students of other majors could have responded as well. In total, we had 169 responses. Some notable results include that 71% of students use Ubuntu as their primary distribution, and 18% use Fedora, and 11% use another distribution. Of all the students that took the survey, around 94% of the students have not used Fedora before, and around 78% of students were open to trying Fedora. Some students gave feedback at the end of the survey, and they were either curious about Fedora or wanted to know what advantages it offered over compared to other Linux distributions. So before establishing the club, we had to create a official constitution, and in that we defined roles for the club objective, and voting rules. We also had to attend defense meetings. There are 2 of them where we had to defend our club idea. The reason for this is because UMass Lowell does not want to fund a club that they don't think will be maintained, or if they believe it won't be beneficial, or it's not an original idea, or a club is too similar to it. After we got the club established, we planned a kickoff event with 2 guest speakers. We also had food and a meet and greet during the event. So far this semester, we've had 2 general body meetings. Unfortunately, because of delays with starting the club, we were only able to get around 10 members. But next year, the next year's group should attend the club fair at UMass Lowell to promote the club, as well as talking to professors to recruit new members or have them advertise the club. We also would like them to brainstorm ideas for future projects, and maybe organize some sort of competitions regarding open source software projects that they can work on in teams. So the deliverables that we've completed this semester were starting an open source club, surveying the UMass Lowell community, successfully building several packages, and getting Fedora installed on a few of the Linux lab machines in the computer science department. Some notable results of the survey include that only 18% of the Linux users at UMass Lowell use Fedora, while 71% use Ubuntu. One of the questions asked what features students preferred in a Linux distribution, and around 20% selected user friendliness as their preferred feature.
So while completing these deliverables, new information and new skills were learned by all of us, us being the capstone project members. For example, being tasked with building software packages led to us learning about what goes into building and reviewing RPM packages and what the guidelines are for package maintenance. Having to push spec files to GitHub helped us learn about GitHub's utility and structure and the usefulness of continuous integration and linting. We also learned about the groundwork of creating an official UML club and what goes into the structure when it's finally created. And finally, based on the survey data, we learned about what distributions are most popular among UML students, and more importantly, that user friendliness is one of the more important features to the Linux users at the university. In the future, our group has plans to continue expanding the open source club and focus more on improving some of the outreach strategies. We think it is important to the club's progress to continue providing a space for members of the open source community to share ideas and projects. We also want to continue building software packages and utilizing the project's GitHub repository for spec files. Finally, we would like to continue gauging how many UML students use Fedora and what they're utilizing the distribution for. So to wrap things up, we're the Red Hat Capstone Group, and we've been working to create a user-friendly Linux distribution based on Fedora. So far, we've completed a lot of the preliminary work, such as working with student government to create an official UML open source club. We've built software packages and learned about reviewing and maintaining them as well. We've worked with the computer science lab management at UML to promote the usage of Fedora on their Linux machines. And finally, we've sent out surveys to UML students to better understand what the preferred qualities of a Linux distribution are and assess Fedora's relative popularity. Our next steps are to continue promoting the UML Open Source Club so that open source software users have a space to share ideas. And also, we aim to find out more information about what Fedora users enjoy and dislike about the distribution. With that data, we can begin to get a sense of what our distribution and packaging will begin to look like. On that note, we would like to take a moment to thank our mentor, Professor Vinod Vokkarane, professor at UML, our sponsor, Mohan Boddu from the Red Hat Company, and Heidi Dempsey, Research and Innovation Director, as well as Jen Nguyen, the Computer and Network System Manager. We thank you all for your help and guidance over the last year. And now is an appropriate time for any questions you guys have.
Are we open mic on this?
Yeah, anyone can join and ask questions. Yeah.
So what are some of the upcoming, you referenced a few of the things that you packaged up that weren't available in Fedora to help people. What are some of the things for the future that you see adding to make Fedora a more attractive distribution for people on the campus?
So we weren't able to release our faculty and IT survey this semester, but we're planning on releasing that survey and getting feedback from the faculty at UMass Lowell regarding what software they require for their courses. And we're going to have the next iteration of the capstone group try to, if there's any closed sourced software that they provide, try to find some open source alternatives.
Can I just?
Yes.
Sorry.
Some of the packages that the students are packaged for this year are the packages that they have used in their courses, so that are not available in Fedora. So, and Professor Vinod and myself are working with other professors and trying to see what they're teaching, and also trying to see if we can leverage Fedora's use over there as well. And one of the aspects that we are trying to tackle over there is the robotics group. We kind of started the conversation, but it kind of on a stalemate right now. So we have to reinitiate those conversations and see what they want and figure out how we can use Fedora over there.
Just to add, I think the robotics and security labs are probably really good bets to start with the computer engineering and computer science department. We are reaching out to other departments. Chemistry is a big user of Fedora. And we're working with campus IT to see how Fedora or any other stable version that they want can be installed in labs and maintained as a part of large-scale student labs.
So actually, just jumping on that, have you interfaced with campus IT to see what kind of campus IT services you might be able to incorporate? I mean, the easiest way to get someone to use, say, Fedora is if there are IT services that everyone needs that can be you access more readily.
Yeah, that's campus IT doesn't want to do anything during the semester, so we are scheduled to do this. This is exam week, so we're scheduled to meet with them next week and kind of figure out the upgrade plan over summer, and hopefully have a nice build that can be put on one of the labs to start with. I think we started the conversation already with computer science. They plan to do it, and there's a Linux lab. I'm in EC, and there's a Linux lab that is scheduled for Fedora full-on packaging and upgrading over summer as well, with single sign-on and other required set of UML software.
If you can convince faculty to use it in a course, then you have, in some ways, a captive market.
Yeah, and I think it's a fair point. We need to get faculty to switch what they're using to get here. So again, I think summer is probably the best time to get that request. With students, we start late fall, and we have a couple of months, and then we break for winter, and then they're actually packaging and doing stuff. So it's once it's into the academic year, it's hard to kind of change or get faculty's attention for lots of changes in their courses. So I think now through end of summer is probably a good time to kind of sit offline, Mohan, myself, Heidi, and talk to them to see how many can commit to run a class in the fall or spring.
You should do it easier. Just go up to the biggest class in CS and ask them, what do you need? And say, we're going to put this into our distro, you know, can you just let students know about it? That's all you need to do.
Yeah, we will, but again, it's a learning curve for the faculty as well, so we want to make sure they are happy.
That's right. That's exactly what BU Linux did.
Yeah. Thanks for the feedback, Ken.
So I'm curious, what was your experience joining the Fedora contributor community from this friendliness point of view? Was it a smooth experience? Were there things we could have made better? How did that onboarding feel?
I think overall it was good. It was definitely a little bit of a learning curve. There's a lot of documentation that we had to read to make sure that we were following all the rules when packaging software. But yeah, at least personally, I had a good experience.
Glad to hear it. If anybody had a less good experience and doesn't want to say it on the call, feel free to reach out to me later or send me an anonymous message or something. I'd love to hear it. But yeah,
Just
I
to
do hope
build
you had
on,
good experiences.
I guess I am to blame as well, part of the way, because I was able to provide the documentation way ahead in advance, and they can go over them and find the needed information. Unlike a new community member without any mentor joining the community and trying to find the information might be trickier. So I guess the experiences are different. That's what I can say.
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually one of the reasons we're kind of investing in mentorship as a project, trying to make sure that we've got that built up so that we have, not just Mohan, but lots of people able to do that. And that's going to include actually all of you, in the next years as you go to the next people. So I think that's cool. Thank you, Mohan.
I would say as like my experience with Linux was was zero. Like I had no experience with Linux before joining this project. So it was sort of my incentive to join the project just to learn a little bit. I think, once you get access to the documentation, it's the learning process is not too bad. Like it's easy to start understanding how things work. I think it's just becoming comfortable with like the language. And I'd say it's similar with GitHub, where it's like learning like the language and like what certain things mean, right? So that was sort of my experience.
We do have a lot of jargon. It's absolutely true.
That's what the grad students are for, is, making up and indexing the jargon, right?
Yeah.
So how did you guys define friendliness for that 22% of the student body that's not you, though? Like, how do you, it's such a vague term, right? How do you figure out what the objectives are for the next group that comes along to be friendly? Or did you not do that yet? I'm guessing from the silence.
I think so what we're trying to say by friendly is just have a version of Fedora with all the packages that are necessary for their courses.
And have it be really simple to bring up your machine with all of that.
Right. Yeah.
And help if it doesn't.
One of the things that we might have to work is with the professors rather than just the students, because the students only know about like what they're going to learn in the course, and nothing much about what are the tools that they're going to use in the course. So it's the professor who helps the students use this particular maybe, for lack of a better example, I'm going to use one of the professors, Professor Vinod's school, course. Like, use Wireshark to track the internet networking stuff. So maybe we have to go and talk to the professors itself and identify what they are teaching and what are the tools that they need to teach the course, and try to package them and please the professors so that they can suggest Fedora as part of their course whenever it comes to that. I know it's a long process, but one day.
Well, I don't know if there is any like a template that you guys have based on other deployments across universities as to a computer science or a computer engineering curriculum as to how different packages map onto different core courses or something like that. I'm sure many schools are already using it. BU Linux was suggested in the chat earlier. I don't know if there is the mapping that is already there that can help us be more focused on approaching different faculty based on their course interests.
Yeah, I don't think there actually is such a thing, That's
Yeah.
part of the reason why we wanted to start this project originally.
Yeah.
I've seen, if you're working with a group of students who are interested in security, then there's a set of things they want to use with Fedora. And if you're working with a set of students who are interested in doing web apps, there's a set of things. And it looks like this group was driven by data analysis, which makes sense since most of you were in the EC department. But I haven't seen something that, just kind of is general all-purpose for computer science and computer engineering in an entire university.
Yeah, so the students already did come up with a survey for university IT and faculty on a broad-based basis if they could actually identify software and get back to us. And I think that will really get us better input. And we hope to send it soon. And it will be caught by the next group. Unfortunately, students have a one-year cycle capstone, so they start in the fall and go through spring, and all these students are about to graduate next week. The club is a good medium for continuation, and hopefully we can learn some new information from faculty and IT and get a good package going for next year.
Ashley has a lot of questions here in chat that are good questions. Can I convince you to join on video, Ashley?
Perhaps not video, but definitely with the
Okay,
mic.
audio is fine. Audio is fine.
Yeah, no, I was just curious about the end goal of this project. I mean, this is the first time that I've heard of a capstone project being passed down from set of students to another set of students over several years. And, just curious on what the far goal is. I mean, you guys just closed out on year 2. Congrats, by the way.
So the final goal is actually have a lab, Fedora lab, specifically. That's what we use. That's the term we use in Fedora world to specify that this particular ISO is going to handle a particular use case. So the idea is to create a Fedora lab that focuses on the university students' needs. So it will have all the packages that students need for any of their coursework. And as part of that, we are also trying to increase the usage of Fedora in University UMass Lowell as well. So that's what we did it this year. Last year we couldn't get to do it, and this year we convinced Nugan to convert some of the machines in the lab to Fedora, and we are hoping by the end of 5 years all the labs will move to Fedora. But again, it's just a hope on that front.
Yeah, it's not quite as much of a 5-year plan as it sounds like in this meeting either, because part of the capstone is to let the students contribute to what the goals are. So the first year of this project was just oriented towards making a Fedora for laptops, actually, because that wasn't even something that was happening at the time. And so this year is when the students, brought in the focus on labs and making something that was more permanent as a gathering spot and a way to find other people who knew something about Fedora, which was really good advice. And so that kind of changed the direction of the project. So each year I expect, there can be that kind of thing going on depending on what inputs we get from students and faculty. It's not a marketing project. This is meant to be a teaching and research project.
And as part of that, we actually created the open source club as well. And we want to try and find all the packages that student needs and get some help from the club itself to package those packages into Fedora. Be it be in capstone project or be a part of open source club or anyone.
So is everybody who's been involved here graduating and moving on? Is there all the students?
No, some of them, yes, but some of them are doing the 4+1 thing. So they're going to be going into the grad school. So maybe we can leverage that and ask the students to create an open source club in the grad school side of things and ask both the groups to work together, or clubs to work together.
I'm curious about this open source club. I mean, largely you guys have been working with the Fedora community on building this distribution, but are there any other communities that perhaps one of the other members have participated in or, contributed to?
Didn't really quite understand the question.
I think I understand. Not me personally. I think this is sort of a lot of our first time like engaging in this sort of community. So it's been an experience, and as far as the open source club goes, just we're sort of in the process of just improving the structure of it, trying to continue with outreach. It's been pretty, I would say it's successful so far. And I'm sure my teammates would agree. So,
I think I understand the question now. So none of the students, when they started, have any open source experience contributing in any of sort of communities. By the end of this course, obviously, they have contributed to Fedora. Even last year and this year, there are some students who used Linux, but then haven't contributed.
Right. And we have some other student groups that are contributing in other places. Like there's a student group that's working on Raspberry Pi applications. And so they contribute both to Fedora on Pi and to other Raspberry Pi programs. And there's another group that works on Pulp UI, which is a tool, another open source tool, completely unrelated to Fedora, that helps you manage your distributions that you're interested in cataloging and sharing in an organization. So, and then we sponsor other projects, especially among grad students, for things like open hardware. So I think just like at BU, where we have a collaboratory, the idea is to give students a whole bunch of opportunities of ways to participate in open source, depending on where their interest happens to be. And the capstone, which is something that UMass Lowell organizes as a year-long thing for seniors, is a really great structure to put one of these into.
Yeah, no, I have to agree. I'm actually I've been graduated from Boston University College of Engineering for a year now, and I also did capstone 1 whole year program, but I did it with OpenStack instead. And so I kind of wanted to hear more from the students on what their onboarding experience was, what kind of mentoring you guys received, because me personally, and also with other team members of mine, we really do love like the mentoring aspect of being part of an open source community and welcoming in new contributors. So I kind of wanted to see what your guys' experience was, because I have absolutely none with Fedora.
We can fix that.
So why don't the students just quickly go through and answer like best worst onboarding experiences, since you all were new to Linux, or at least to Fedora?
For me, it was a pretty good experience. It was a little bit overwhelming at first because of how much documentation there was, but yeah, with Mohan mentoring us, it was pretty easy. If we ever were stuck on something, we could ask him, and he would help us out. So I didn't really have any. I had no bad experiences.
I think what was nice was that we were all on like the same boat, right? So like we all were working together to sort of begin to like understand things, working through like learning about packaging. It could get very confusing, but then we also had Mohan as like a guide. So anytime we ran into issues, like we could contact him and he would help us out. So I think the overall experience was very good.
I'd have to agree with Sage and Robert. My favorite thing about the onboarding was how well the examples were documented in the packaging guidelines and how they were in different languages. And there were actually 2 separate examples. One was, I believe it was called GNU Hello. It was very simple and easy to follow. And then you would move on to more, in my opinion, complex examples to kind of build you up to packaging, and especially since it was in different languages as well.
That's nice to hear. And I'd like to share that with the people who made the packaging guidelines have worked on it. I don't know who did all of the writing there, but if you would happen to have like a blog post or something about that, that would be lovely. Or even a forum post on like discussion.fedoraproject.org. I think that would be really nice. I think people would like to see that, because I think actually often people hear complaints about the packaging guidelines. So too much, this doesn't cover the thing they needed. So I think hearing some nice things would be great for people. And if it's possible for you to do that somewhere public, that would be awesome. If not, I can tell people, but better yet coming from you, I think.
Yeah, or even a simple Twitter post. That also helps.
Yeah, right.
I mean, compared to like some of the textbooks that we've been forced to read, like the guidelines of like Dr. Seuss level. So.
That's actually sounds really amazing because I think documentation is one of the most notorious aspects of open source communities. I know I struggle with documentation on my side, so that's awesome.
That's actually a wonderful segue into another thing I wanted to ask. So how much does the open source club intersect with people in the class? How many people from outside of the class are there? And how many of them are from outside of like CS engineering backgrounds?
I believe all are in computer science and electrical engineering backgrounds. I'd say maybe 3 are outside of the course, right?
So I know it's a hard thing to do, but a route for possible growth. This guy's kind of talking about this with people recently. I don't know, they did an interview where it was kind of a central part of it, where like this stuff is that you all are doing is incredibly important, but like all of the stuff around the project, like that docs writing and all that, like you can do it, but there are also people who specialize in it. That's their field, and a lot of the communication, like through the business stuff, there actually are things in open source that are everybody's skills can apply to, and it would be nice to see the open source club kind of embrace that and try and get more participants from a lot of different areas who are interested in making open source work, because we need that coming into all of the projects, not just Fedora, but definitely Fedora in particular.
Yeah, so actually that's the reason why when we were asked what to name the club as, I wanted it to be started with the Linux club, but someone from chemistry department already has it. So, and then we were talking about Fedora club and stuff like that, and I was like, no, it's not going to be one particular thing. So let's go with the open source club. We have to embrace everything. And another thing that I want to mention here, like probably a help from Matt. So we are trying to organize some events and some presentation sessions and things like that. So the first, when we kicked off the club, we started with open source one-on-one with from why am I blanking on his name suddenly? Give me 1 second. There were 2 talks. One from Ben Cotton, and the other one is where is it? Sorry, I'm trying to find his name.
Is it Justin Flory?
Justin Flory. Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Sorry. So and there was good response about those presentations and stuff. So we want to expand those more, not just random presentations, but more on like workshops and tutorials and stuff like that. So if you have anything in mind that can help us in that would be super useful.
That seems so broad. I'm not sure how to answer, but
any like 1 hour or half an hour thing that we can do to engage students.
So are you guys, or I'm sorry, was the question like how to engage students outside
No.
of the
I'm looking
CS?
for more resources.
Or where to get resources?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a hard question, because even I struggle with that when I was doing capstone and now as a mentor. Getting resources that's outside of whatever the university can provide is difficult. I had started with AWS, but that turned out to be really expensive. So yeah, I don't have much of an answer for that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I'm looking for free resources, especially.
What kind of resources, I guess, is
more like presenters or like for example, maybe you can give a talk about Fedora history. So we want you on one of the sessions.
I could absolutely do that. So people to speak.
Yeah. people to speak, and also not just speaking,
Yeah.
and like
Right.
maybe do some workshops, or maybe do some hackathon help, or
Yeah.
like bugathons,
Yeah, no, that's
anything.
good. I mean, honestly, just reaching out to community members is a surefire way of getting some kind of response. I mean, really, just asking, hey, are you free so and so day? Help a group of students work through such and such task that you propose. But yeah.
So on the flip side of this, the Fedora conference, Nest with Fedora, we're doing it virtually again this year, unfortunately. But I think this presentation or something like it would be really well received there. We haven't done our call for papers yet, but if when that comes out, watch on the community blog for it. Mohan can maybe poke you at the time. I think that would, I'd love to see that. People would really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I mean, if any of the members of the group, new or incoming, are interested in exploring outside of Fedora, OpenStack's always available. You can email me at any time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Gabby, who was a previous intern, did a presentation at Nest. Do you want to say anything about what that was like, Gabby?
Yeah, I thought with the virtual setting, it was pretty easy. I was just in my attic at home, and so I didn't have to. I felt like I was really comfortable, and it wasn't as daunting as like talking in front of thousands of people or whatever in real life. So, would recommend.
Yeah, thank you. Speaking of that, there is also devconf.us, which will be in person at the end of August. Should also possibly be a place to present, show off what you're doing. I think that actually has to call for papers open now.
Yeah, I think it's gonna close this weekend if I'm not wrong.
So okay, well, hurry. Maybe too late for that.
Going back to the technical work, from the survey, user friendliness, or I'm assuming that means UI for the students that you guys surveyed. Is there any like additional work you guys might be thinking for changing the UI in your distribution, or are you limiting right now anyways to just including packages and programs that are useful to the students and faculty?
I think we've mainly just been thinking about like what applications STEM students use most often, and like just making those available to them. Sort of like primary objective right now, just instead of like UI or UX.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. This has been a really interesting discussion, and I appreciate you guys sharing the experiences at UMass Lowell and getting together with the Fedora folks. Anybody who has questions, follow up, you can reach Mohan directly, or you can reach me directly, and we can get you in touch with the students. Thanks very much. We'll have another RIG meeting on the first Tuesday of next month. The topic will probably be going back to some of the BU collaboratory projects, and also some intern and co-op projects that have been in progress for the last 6 months with our new co-op group, and they'll be presenting some of their results. So thank you for joining, and hope we see you next month. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And someone can